I'm Mac McClelland, the president and CEO of Center House Limited and a professor at Hult International Business School and the Abu Dhabi School of Management as a part-time hobby almost that I enjoy doing, and meeting the students and talking about the things that I'm passionate about, namely leadership and management. Thanks to Nutshell for hosting this hybrid conference. I'm really looking forward to coming to Pakistan as soon as travel permits and participating in person. This morning I've been asked to talk about leadership in a VUCA world. Now, let me start out with a little bit of history. I'm a professor, so I have to teach a little bit too. World War II, after the Germans and Japanese were defeated, became a polarized world in the sense that the US and the Soviet Union became the two superpowers, and around which everything revolved. It was, for the 50 years or so after World War II, it was a fairly stable world. You knew who the enemy was. They wore a different uniform. They spoke a different language. You knew the geographical location where they were. It became known as the Cold War. There was not a hot shooting war, but the adversaries were well defined. The two superpowers used opportunities to pull the other one into something that would deplete their resources, embarrass them, cause them a defeat. So the Soviet Union pulled the United States into Vietnam. The US pulled the Soviet Union into Afghanistan, and both of those ended up in defeats for the respective client states. With the withdrawal of Russia from Afghanistan in the late 80s and the collapse of the Soviet Union less than 2 years later, the world began to feel and look different. They weren't, it wasn't as easy to define who people were on the battlefield, if there was a battlefield. And so the US military commissioned the US Army War College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, to do some research and figure out this post-Cold War era, what it was going to look like. And they came up with the acronym VUCA. Now, VUCA stands for, first, volatility, that the situation is unexpected or unstable, and it might be of unknown duration, but it's not hard to understand. And there's probably information available to help you understand and assess the situation. Uncertainty, the U in VUCA, although there might not be a lot of information about it, the events, cause and effect are known. Change is possible, but not guaranteed. The C, complexity, there are many interconnecting parts, and it's difficult to understand, and there might be too much information available. Now remember, this was in the early to mid 90s when they were doing this, before third platform technologies of artificial intelligence and big data, the ability to assimilate, crunch, assess, and use a lot of data. But it's still a complex world. And finally, ambiguity. The causes of what's happening are unknown and unclear. There's no historical precedent that you can use to evaluate it. This becomes the unknown unknowns. Now, Donald Rumsfeld was the youngest Secretary of Defense when he served in the mid-70s for President Gerald Ford in the United States. He then was the oldest Secretary of Defense when he served for President George W. Bush between 2001 and 2006, coinciding with 9/11 and the immediate aftermath. And I'm going to read something to you that he said. I would try and do it, but I know I would mess it up if I didn't read it. It said, "Reports that something has happened are always interesting to me because, as we know, there are known knowns. There are things we know we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things that we don't know. But there are also unknown unknowns. There are The ones we don't know, we don't know. And it's the latter category that tend to be the most difficult ones and the ones that cause us the most problems. And so as leaders in a VUCA world, our responsibility, our mission is to change volatility into vision so that we can clearly see what's happening. The uncertainty into understanding, using the information we have, the complexity into clarity, and finally the ambiguity into agility. Because crises can do more to damage not only reputations and all, but also take people's lives, injure people, and they always happen. Crises always happen when we're least prepared for them. The resources that we would normally have available aren't, for some reason. They're constrained because they're being used for something else, or as in the current pandemic, there just weren't enough of all of the PPE and medical equipment necessary to fight the pandemic in the early days. And so, as we've seen, crises can happen and be caused by a lot of different reasons. Natural disasters, technological disasters. You know, the Y2K bug that many believed was going to crash the computer systems around the world. Okay, that was a technological crisis that fortunately didn't have the effect that we thought it was. But it can be deception, misconduct, confrontation, any number of things, up to and including war. We as leaders have to manage that VUCA world and change to accommodate the things that happen. Change is inevitable. You know, if you're sitting on your hands saying things are going to be the same, I don't have to worry about it, you're going to be mistaken. And learning from that change is optional. A lot of times we do things, we adapt to the change, but then we fail to learn from it. We're in an information age. It took transistor radios 38 years to reach 50 million people worldwide when radios first came out. On the other hand, when the first iPhone came out, it took 180 days to reach 50 million people. When Google, in the early days of Google, when it was first launched, there were about 2.6 billion searches a year, roughly 100 million a month. Now there are 2.6 billion every day. It's incredible, the number of things that happen, but specifically when you consider that in 1984, there were only about 1,000 internet-capable devices. And those were held mainly by the US and British governments and the government research labs and some of the larger universities that were experimenting how to use them, how to use the internet once it became a public commodity. Now there are about 8 billion internet-capable devices, and a farmer in Uganda has the same access to information as, you know, any person anywhere else in the world who, you know, Bill Gates, one of the richest men in the world. The farmer in Uganda has exactly the same access to information as Bill Gates does because of technology. That smartphone that half of the world's population has is available to everybody. That information age consists right now in 2020 of about 40 zettabytes of information. That's 40 with 21 zeros after it, or 40 million trillion bytes of information. If everybody jumped on Twitter with President Trump and tweeted 24 hours a day for the next 100 years, that would equal about 1 zettabyte. We currently, this year, have 40 zettabytes of information flowing around us, and that goes up exponentially every year. Why does it matter to us Why do we care? You know, if you're in business or in government or in conducting stability operations somewhere around the world, you have to look at who your customer is. And again, I'm going to read a brief passage to you. Being British, and I just chose British, being British is about driving a German car, wearing an Italian suit with a Korean-made mobile phone, to an Irish pub for a Belgian beer, grabbing an Indian curry or Turkish kebab on the way home, and sitting on a Swedish-made couch with your Brazilian wife watching an American situation comedy with Arabic subtitles on a Japanese-manufactured mega-screen television set, searching on your iPad for a job in Melbourne. And that could be Melbourne, Australia, or Melbourne, Florida. It's no longer the case that we are in one place, everybody's like us, they look like us, they talk like us, they think like us. It's not that kind of world anymore. And so if we go back to that VUCA world, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity of the world today, we see it manifested in the things that we do and the things that happen to us and around us. It's not something that we as leaders can ignore. And it's certainly something that as leaders, the ones who embrace the fact that we are in a VUCA world and understand, figure out, and then understand how to combat it, how to bring that vision, that understanding, the clarity, and to the business, the academic world, the government, whatever it is, we're going to be the better leaders for it. And so again, I thank Nutshell for hosting this and for inviting me to speak. I know that they will make my contact information available. So if there's a question that I can answer for you, I'm happy to. Again, I'm Mac McClelland, president of Center House Limited and a professor in a couple of universities here in the United Arab Emirates. Please reach out, let me know what your questions are, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. Thank you very much.